so we can get going. Welcome to the meeting of the Silver Falls School Board tonight. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda tonight?
Move for approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, student reps, William and Kylene. Good to see you guys again. Yeah.
No, I wasn't filming in.
That's okay.
So I'm going to first start off with Interact Club. Ms. Romanian started that off, and they went shopping last week at Target for Tree of Giving. Pretty much all the clubs this week have been working on Tree of Giving and supporting that. So NHS, the NHS is working on Toy Drive at the moment. Students are bringing unwrapped gifts by December 12th. Saturday and Sunday, NHS students, about 25, were working at Silver Falls at the Christmas Holiday Festival. Tree of Giving won over 130 gifts this year, so they want to make it over the amount. Also, they were helping at the community center here for the holiday festival. Then on Monday, December 17th, Tree of Giving members will be wrapping those presents. FBLA community service projects are working at the moment. FBLA students reach the little kids at Eugene Field. Also are answering Santa letters for them. Decorating holiday festival trees on Saturday. And then February 2nd, they qualified for state. For ASB, they went shopping at the Clackamas Town Center to get gifts for Tree of Giving. All the money was spent from the Coin Drive fundraiser. Now they are all wrapping the presents and for the families that will get those presents. FFA, Ag Sales was last weekend on December 5th, and they qualified for state. Green Hand ceremonies were this Saturday. FFA students have been doing many fundraisers such as making wreaths, centerpieces, and been selling poinsettias. Also fundraising for trees. They took their test for state degree test, and they will be giving us scores soon. Destiny. Preparing for the Frog Prince. The audition starts January 8th, and they are wrapping up all the props from the Tempest. Child Theater will be coming up soon and from the second week of January and preparing for that. Key Club members will be caroling at many stores around the holidays. They'll be helping holiday fundraising and going to be working at a Christmas farm, and all the proceeds will be going towards Willamette Valley Nursing Home.
Alright. Before I report on winter sports, I'd like to recap on the boys football season. The team would go 2-1 in playoffs with wins over Putnam 49-0 and West Albany 35-6 before losing in the semifinals to Sherwood 19-46 at Willamette University. Last night, the program had its annual banquet at which the seniors were honored and high hopes for next year's season were made. The winter sports season, on the other hand, began December 1st. The season is still very early. In swimming, both girls and boys will compete at a meet in West Albany tomorrow, December 11th, and next Tuesday, December 18th. In girls dance, the team is continuing their hard work in preparation for their next meet, Saturday, January 12th, 2013. And cheer team will also be competing mid-January. Boys wrestling competed this past Saturday, December 8th, at the Silverton Invitational. 8 teams were invited, including Jefferson, Jervis, and Beaverton. Overall, the Foxes finished second behind Beaverton. Seniors Quinn Dreyer, Isaac Tobin, and Randy Stoker, plus freshman Austin Reed, all placed first in their divisions. Next up for the team is a league meet this Wednesday, December 12th. Girls basketball is at an even 2-2 record. They won over Roosevelt November 30th, 71-33. North Eugene, December 4th, 45-43. Their losses were to Mountain View, December 7th, 40-53, and Mazama, December 8th, 34-58. Next, the group will face Sherwood tomorrow night, December 11th at home. Boys basketball has a solid 2-win, 1-loss record. Their wins came November 30th and December 4th over Sprague and North Eugene. The latest game, December 7th, the team had to cope with injuries to key players Zach Angler and Trevor Bledsoe. The team lost that night to a very strong Churchill. Tomorrow night, December 11th, the boys take on Sherwood at the opponent's court. That's all for sports. Thank you.
Good job. Any questions for these guys?
William, who is the swim coach this year?
Sydney.
Yeah,
She's
so
so good.
it's still the same.
S-
Sydney.
Okay, thank you.
Kylene, do you know how much money was raised from the coin drive for the Tree of Giving?
It was 4,000.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
It
Awesome.
was- we didn't think we were gonna make that much as we did, but
He came in like the last day and made like I think it was like 1,500 at the football game and stuff. So.
Wow, that's
it was-
awesome.
It was a blessing.
Yeah.
So how many families or kids or whatever were they able to shop for?
82 or 80? Yeah, I think it was 82.
That's
Oh, that's
great.
tremendous.
It was really fun. We got to wrap them to like the presents today, and just like to know that they're going to a home was very
Yeah.
special.
Awesome. Good.
Good job.
Good. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys for your report. Very good. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to discussion items. We'll just go through these one by one in case anybody has any comments. Whoops, oh, sorry about that. Audience with visitors. I'd like to open it up for the first audience with visitors. Does anybody like to address the board tonight? Saw you guys first, so go ahead, and then Gene can come after you. You want to come up and sign in and introduce yourself? That'd be great.
Evening, board chair and members of the board. My name is Gerald Fisher. I live at 605 South Water Street. And I was very pleased to see in the last newspaper the article about a potential personal finance course. I did have a personal finance course when I was in high school, almost 30 years ago. Wasn't near as comprehensive as the one you're proposing, but I think it's very important that our children, before they leave school and go out into the world of adults, that they have the opportunity to understand finance and how important it is in their daily life. It's also a good precursor to college classes, any finance courses that they may take in community college or university. And many folks don't understand the importance or the impacts of finance to the point to where our legislature had to actually force credit card companies to put right on the bill how long it will take you to pay off your bill. So I fully support this this move to start teaching our kids finance, and hope it gets passed. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
You're here in support of personal finances too.
I think it's a good idea. In fact, though, it was presented before, probably in the 80s, if I didn't go into it.
It's before the 80s because I had it in high school. And
Well, thank you. I'm here to talk about what you've been hearing from me about the Slater campus. I'm concerned about abandoning that building. I feel that we have something of value, that we should keep it, we should be maintaining it rather than distressing it, which the building is under stress at the moment. I want to comment about the words that Bob Collins shared at the last work session. There was something in the presentation that, to me, that was obviously didn't follow. He made a presentation about what the costs were in given areas. He was quoting about 24J quite a bit. Said that the building costs were running from $210 to $350 a square foot. Then he proceeded to advise the board that he thought that the building, if you tore the building down and put a new building there, that it would be $20 million. Well, if you follow the discussion, we basically were talking about if we had an average student body of 700, and that was 150 square feet per each, that's 105,000 square feet. Divide 105,000 square feet into the 20 million, that's only $190 a foot. So the recommendation doesn't follow. Even Mr. Stadley commented, if this continues on the path of this occupancy change, which causes us to put in more costs on the outside grounds, the storm sewer catch basins, etc., we're going to have other costs, and that's not counting the demolition of the building, which has a whole bunch of asbestos in it, which if we tear it down, we have to deal with it. If we leave it alone, we don't have to deal with it. So I want to point out that there's a problem with that. If we talked in terms of tearing down everything but the gym, it's around 121,000 square feet. If we were going to replace all of that, that comes down to about $165 a foot if we're talking about 20 million. I feel with the record that Dole Weeks has given us in the past, that the building costs are going to cost more like 40 million, in my opinion, and therefore we have a spread between what has been recommended by one of the three parties that came in and looked at the building recently, that we could have something that would be remediated to a middle school for about or under 10 million. So I think we need to pay close attention to that. So it follows, my next statement is, I think that we are promoting and going to make a decision tonight, it's on your agenda, to approve Dole Weeks as being the architect for this process, whether it be new or whether it be remediation. I don't feel it's appropriate at this time to proceed with that decision. I think it's premature, and I particularly feel that way relative to the architect. I know that during the course of events for the second phase, it was questioned during the bond meeting. I know that Wally himself said there was a question about whether we wanted to hire the same architect back. Well, we just spent, instead of spending 33 million, we spent 53 million. And that this architect helped in that process. Instead of being frugal, we need to be more frugal in our town rather than somebody who spends a lot of money. So I feel that regardless, though, if we keep going on the path of tearing the building down and what the costs are going to be, I don't think that we're going to get the votes for the bonds. We're spending a lot of money and we're not going to get it back. So the third item I have is I would like to request formally that I have access to the building, and I'd like to do so with a tour with Dana Smith, and anybody that would like to go with us and look at the building. I don't know how long it's been since members of the board have looked at the building in its current condition. I looked at it on the outside on Saturday, walked around and looked at all of the foundations. There aren't any cracks. The main building, built in 1938, has been there for almost 75 years. There are no movement cracks, no shrinkage cracks, no nothing. And the front of the building is 250 feet long. If you think about it, that's pretty phenomenal for a building of that age. There's just no movement in it. Of course, it does need seismic upgrading. There's no question about that. So, and then lastly, there is a forum on Wednesday evening. The discussion is that there's going to be a presentation. Andy and Mr. Collins are going to speak. I think it would be appropriate to have some opinion there as to the positive nature of what would happen if we did a remediation, if it was possible to do it for 10 million. In my opinion, we have an asset. I told you over a year ago that we had an asset that's 50 million. That's counting the gym. If we tear down those parts and not counting the gym, we're tearing down a $40 million asset. So to me, it's like we have an asset, say it's $4, and we can fix that asset for $1 and keep it. Or we can throw it away and then have to buy a new asset for $40 million. So that's a $30 million spread to our taxpayers. And you know, if you talk to a lot of people, they're going to tell you, we're tired of the taxes and we can't afford it. We have limited income. And so that's what I pray that you consider. And I appreciate that I'm able to speak.
Okay, any questions for Gene? Okay, thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address the board? Nobody? Okay. Move on to discussion items. We'll go through these. There were just 2 that came in our packet this time because there were only 2 that had changes on them. But I'll read them off in case anybody has any other comments on them. Second reading on all these. The first one, cyberbullying. Any comments? Okay, compulsory attendance. Nothing? Okay. Another one that had some wording changes, hazing, harassment, intimidation, menacing, bullying, cyberbullying, teen dating, violence, student. Any comments on that one? Okay. Another cyberbullying one, the JFCFA. JHFE, reporting of suspected abuse of a child. Nothing? Okay. JHFF, reporting requirements regarding sexual conduct with students. Moving on, education records, records of students with disabilities. All good. Directory information. Personally identifiable information. Okay, and lastly, public charter schools. Nothing?
Andy,
Okay.
Andy, appreciate your changes on here and
Yeah.
the work you did on that.
Thank you for researching those questions. Okay, next discussion item, the December 17th work session, there's a conflict with the SHS choir concert that night, and I know I have a conflict, I don't know if anybody else does, but there were some different ideas. We could leave it where it was, we could move it to another night that week. Andy and I had talked about the possibility of moving it to like 6 o'clock and making it a shorter meeting, or we had talked about the need of even having it because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, if anything's changed since we last talked about this, but there really isn't anything pressing to discuss. I mean, there's the stuff for the bond issue, but there's nothing that really needs to be discussed right away with that. So I just wanted to get some feedback, see what everybody wanted to do. We do have our community meeting on Wednesday night, and we could possibly get together and talk about that, but I don't know if things would be compiled by that time either from the comments that people bring forward.
So, and Andy, if we do go forward with the bond, when do we need to get the scope of work determined? Do you have a timeline on that yet? I think we do, but.
Yeah, your resolution, action for a resolution needs to occur by that second week in March. There is, and we've let the folks at DAWA know that this is time sensitive and that conceptual designs and works specific to the Schlater campus need to be developed as soon as possible. So we've given them a late January tentative deadline and keeping in mind the January 30th public forum, which is scheduled already, that between now and then that we can have some information available from the architect at that time.
Okay. And there is a possibility of, needing to have extra meetings in January as we move through the bond process.
Let's
and
get more
things.
information.
So, yeah.
What about budget-wise? The governor's been busy recently. Is there anything
Yeah, I do
you
have
can
an
talk about?
update during my report section,
Is it better to wait till after the first of the year?
There's still a number of unknowns specific
Okay.
to that, and Jan and I have been discussing some preliminary figures at this point, but still, there are just, I think, too many unknowns for us to really know exactly what that looks like.
Thoughts on next Monday night, the work session?
It'd be nice to discuss what people's thoughts were about the community meeting on Wednesday, but other than that, I can't really think of it. It'd be nice just to get a sense of what that initial feedback is. Because when's our next meeting then?
Wouldn't be until the second Monday in January, Tom,
Yeah.
and then your work session would
It'd
be
just
after
be
that.
a
So
long, maybe we just make a point of getting together after the meeting. I don't know, after that Wednesday night meeting. I don't know, it just depends if it feels like it's a really productive meeting, there's lots of things
Yeah, it's kinda hard
to
to-
think over. Sometimes it might just be nothing to talk about, I don't know.
To know how many people.
Yeah. That's my only
Things
thought.
like that. So.
Well, I'm in favor of having as many meetings as possible. As long as we can make them. So, if we don't have anything really substantial to discuss, I guess I'd go along with not having the meeting. But I agree with Tom, if we have some really interesting material gleaned from our community meeting on the 12th, it might be good to discuss that while it's still fresh in our minds.
Okay.
Either way, I can do that one.
What about Monday, or would you want a Monday or a different night, or does Monday work best for everybody? If we
Any
go ahead
night's
and have it?
fine. Yeah, I'm open all week.
Well, we could have it an hour earlier, that would work fine. We don't have that much to discuss.
Yeah, it would be short. I mean, if it was, I don't think it'd anticipate a long one.
No, I think we can keep to 45 minutes, or, you know, and Tim, you and I discussed being able to get all the information compiled, and that's going to be determined after Wednesday, of course.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
much information there actually is to compile. And I think through Denise's efforts and mine, we can have everything together and ready in a package for you, let's say 6 o'clock Monday night, for a 45-minute discussion, and that puts you in there right at 7, Tim.
That'd be
when you
fine,
get
yeah.
there.
That would be
Or
good.
a little late, that's fine too, doesn't matter. So.
Yeah.
Shall we do a 6 o'clock on
Yeah,
Monday?
I think it'd be good to talk about our first impressions. you
Yeah,
know,
okay.
maybe.
Let's do that, 6 o'clock Monday on the 17th for the work session.
And time limited.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Okay, number C, proposed required personal finance course at the high school. We got information about this at our last work session, and any other comments? We had a talk from Mr. Fisher tonight, and then we had a letter recently in my email also, so.
Excuse me. I just would like to see it a graded class. I think that would be really important, the pass-fail. I think a lot of kids won't take it seriously, and that I would like to see it a graded class and not just pass-fail.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, Julie. I think kids are going to take it.
I agree with that too. I think that's a good idea. The feedback that I've had is that this is very well received. Ideas, like it's about time. So, very supportive of this.
Yeah. I had personal finance when I was in high school, and I really enjoyed it. It was really an informative class, and I know it's going to be even more extensive this time to cover a lot of different things, so. And we will, we thought it'd be a good idea to postpone voting on this until our January regular session, just to give people an opportunity to give more feedback, because tonight might be the first time a lot of people hear about it. So since we're adding the half credit, that's the main reason. Since we're adding the half credit, we'd like to give people a chance to give feedback on that, so. Okay. Next item, resolution authorized refunding of 2007 general obligation bond issue. This is for any people who haven't heard about this, with interest rates so low, we have a chance to kind of refinance the bond from 2006, the last bond for the high school. And it would still be the same amount of maturity time left on the bond, but with lower interest rates, it could potentially save. Right now, we're at 3.2 million, save taxpayers 3.2 million over the life of the bond. So excellent idea, I think, to do. Anybody have any comments about it?
No-brainer.
Steam
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
Pretty much no-brainer. This is an action item tonight, so we can get rolling with this too, so. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Andy. To save taxpayers $3 million is quite a step, so.
You're welcome. We've got quite an advocate in Carol Samuels of Seattle Northwest, who worked closely with Jan, and she's worth having on board. And we've had her for multiple bonds in this district, and has helped the district serve the patrons of the district very well.
And thank you too, Jan, for your detailed reports on all that
Yeah.
stuff too, so.
Yes, this is more work for you, so thank you.
Well, actually, Seattle Northwest really does most of the work for us. So, again,
Oh,
referring to
terrific.
Carol Samuels, yes. And the bond attorneys, they make sure everything's taken
Does this
care of.
affect our arbitrage at all? Or are we finally taking care of that?
No arbitrage. We will have to be filing, our 5 years is up on these bonds in January. And so if there is rebate to be paid, which there could still be, we'll be making a payment from the remaining proceeds of those bonds to the federal government.
So in January, we're done with that?
Well, January's 5 years, and as long as we have money still from the proceeds, we have to deal with arbitrage.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion items tonight? Seeing none, moving on to administrator and staff reports. Andy, you can start on your little list.
Yeah, I've got a few things that I'd like to share with you and answer any questions that you may have. First of all, related to the governor's proposed 2013-15 budget, keep in mind it's a proposed budget by the governor, and it still has quite a bit of work ahead in both the House and the Senate before it's ultimately approved. However, it's a good barometer of where what the governor is thinking, and I think what the legislature is potentially thinking. A couple of points of note specific to the governor's budget. It is $6.15 billion for education, K-12 education, excuse me, and there is the potential, depending upon whether any legislation specific to PERS reform is not only initiated but approved, that figure could rise to as high as $6.4 billion with the additional savings from PERS reform specific to 2 areas of legislation. And so that's healthy. However, keeping in mind the increased rates that the district and every other public entity in Oregon is having to be able to address, the additional $6.15 billion, or the difference between that and the current biennial budget of 5.7 is quickly eaten up by PERS. So as Jan and I are beginning to crunch some numbers, I think you'll see, as much as that sounds nice, going from 5.7 billion to 6.15, the relative level of optimism is still nowhere near as high as I think any of us would like. It's an improvement, and it's a slow growth improvement, but I think we're still in a wait and see mode to determine how this is going to, or how long it's going to take for truly educational funding to return in Oregon schools. So, on that note, I do want to remind you about your special board meeting on Wednesday. We've heard reference to that a couple of times tonight. The format for that meeting is similar to what you did a couple of years ago at your budget forum. There'll be a presentation at the beginning that'll last about 30 minutes by Bob Collins and by me. And at that time, each of the administrators who will be in attendance will be leading some table discussions. I've given you at your place tonight copies of 4 questions that I'm using as guides for discussion, and I put those in front of you as a draft and seeking your input, and that input can be tonight. It can also be by email over the next couple of days as you like, but for the benefit of the audience, the questions are related to, based upon the information you've received to this point, this is a question to the public, what would you like the board to know about each of these elements? Vacating Eugene Field School, completion of deferred maintenance and facility upgrade projects in all district schools, and adaptive reuse of the Schlater campus to a 5-6 self-contained and a 7-8 grade departmentalized campus. So I'm hoping to draw out some open-ended comments from folks, in addition to some specific comments that are driven by the presentation that Bob and I make on Wednesday. I've also placed a question in there about the relative feel of the community related to maintaining, or not exceeding, I should say, the 2012 property tax rate at $3.35 per thousand of assessed value. I think that's important input for you to have based upon conversation to this point. And then the third question relates specific to the Schlater campus. Preliminary information indicates that remodeling of the Schlater campus would be the same cost or at near the cost as partial demolition and new construction. What information would you like the board to know about those 2 options? And I think it's fair for you to ask the community for that, and I think it's appropriate for you to do so as well, because if there are specific sentiments out there about the existing building that you're not aware of, I think you need to know, and so it's important to ask that question. And then finally, an open-ended question: what additional input would you like the board to know? I'll also be going over multiple means of communication with the district and with you during the meeting as well. So again, keeping in mind your 2 purposes for this forum, and for the couple of forums you've got scheduled, and for your work towards facility planning, educating the public and providing sufficient opportunity for public input. And I think you're doing a good job in meeting that, and Wednesday night will be the next example of that. And then finally, district architect recommendation. I've given you some memo information specific to DAWA I think it's very important for us to recognize as district staff and for you to understand the thoroughness and detailed efforts that the district went through in order to come up with this recommendation. It was published in the Daily Journal of Commerce. We had multiple architects interested in this job. There were pre-qualifiers expected of all architects who submitted an interest, including those related to retrofitting aged and even historic buildings, to the potential for restructuring of facilities of that sort within the Schlater campus. So we tried as best as we could to select an architect that contained those elements of diversity that you are experiencing in this district. And again, that's not just limited to the Schlater campus. You've got a couple of buildings in this district that you also need some additional investigative style architecture input related to things like the cafeteria roof structure at Butte Creek School, or upgrades to some of the other buildings in this district, the gym at Central Halsey, for instance. You've got some issues that a well-versed, experienced architectural firm needs to address. Based upon our interviews of the candidates, our review of all the applications, our review of references, and we made multiple reference checks, we believe that Dole Olson Weeks IBI Group Architects is the one that will best serve the Brook Falls School District. That's what I have to offer.
Great. Questions for Andy? Just one quick question. You may not know this, but in the governor's proposed budget, there was some PERS reforms he was talking about. If those would come to fruition, or they wanted to pursue those, is that something that could be tied up in court for a while with PERS reforms? Or, I mean, so is that going to delay knowing what the budget would be if things go to court?
Your
PERS.
Based upon information from those in the know, political pundits, all of what you want, OSBA and COSA folks, the answer to your first question is no. I remember what your first question was. Yes, they could very well be taken to task.
Yeah.
The answer, so that's yes. The answer to your second question is likely no. I mean, there's a belief that the legislation would be approved in such a way that it would offer 2013-15 revenue generation, or at least in the form of relief from the changes to PERS, and that if there was a legal action, or legal attention to that it would occur after the fact.
I see. Okay. Okay. I was just curious about the delay the process. Okay. Thanks. Jan, financial and food services.
Yes, you should have received the report in the mail. I just wanted to make a brief comment on the food service report that I was quite pleasantly surprised when I got to the bottom line there. They're doing quite well. And just recently did send in the certification of the new menu planning and should be receiving 6 cents a meal more than they have. And so should be able to, my hope is, break pretty well even this year, and that'll be the first time in several years that we haven't had to dip into their reserves to run the program.
Good. 6 cents more per meal from the
federal government.
Okay. And that's based on the menu planning, you said?
Well, the certification of the new menu planning, that we're doing everything that, as far as the calorie counts, and you've probably read numerous articles about it. Yeah.
Everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, questions for Jan? Great. Kevin Palmer, Butte Creek.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. That's fine.
Sure.
Добрый вечер. Я рад видеть вас. Я хочу рассказать вам о школе Butte Creek. That's Russian. English, good evening. It's nice to be here to talk about Butte Creek. And that was taught to me by Delfuza Johnson, our Russian teacher, as well as the first and second graders in Russian class, who stop by my office every day when they get done on the way home, make sure to tell me "До свидания" on the way out the door. So they've taught me a few things. A little bit more in Russian school, Russian class later though. The top half of the report you have in yellow talks about some of the changes at Butte Creek and some of the things that we've got going on this fall. It has been an incredibly smooth fall and extremely positive out of Butte Creek. Climate-wise, it's just been tremendous. We have a few new staff members out there that are highlighted in bold for you and are doing a great job. They're terrific additions to our school. We've got a lot of activities going on in the fall, including open house, spaghetti dinner, outdoor school for 6th graders, and we got a grant along with Scotts Mills and Central Howell from the Gray Family Foundation for $4,000 to help defray the cost of outdoor school, which was really nice. It's the second time we've gotten a grant like that. We have our Christmas program coming up this Friday night at the high school. We have Lego and Vex robotics teams, both versions going, and after school AK science programs. We've got our Russian dinner coming up, a couple of dates I'd like you guys to be aware of. On January 11th at 6 p.m. is the 3rd annual Russian dinner at Butte Creek. Our PTT has been active as usual with Oktoberfest and Walkathon, and they've got their 15th annual auction coming up on February 23rd. It's a little bit later in the month of February than most, but they decided to move it further away from the holidays just a little bit. So February 23rd. But by far the biggest news of the fall out of Butte Creek has been the opening of the play shed, the new covered, expanded, sided play shed project. The photos started down here with Tom, and it's, I don't know where it is now, in the line down to Irv, and you can go around there. Terry Little took those photos and put them together for you guys. A great project, a great partnership between the school and the school district and our parent club, who contributed $55,000 to the project, and we opened it up on October 30th for the kids. And they were extremely excited to get underneath there and play. It keeps them dry, keeps them fairly warm and out of the wind. So stop by sometime and I'll take you out and show you the new play shed. The kids and staff are loving it, especially the people that have to stand out in recess duty 45 minutes at a time.
It's a good winter to have a play shed.
Absolutely. We have 1,052 volunteer hours so far at Butte Creek, and our attendance rate is 94.9%, which leads into some of our academic programs in the second section. Last year, we were just short of our school goal of 95%, 93.9. So right now, we're a full percentage point ahead of that and hoping to get that 95% that we set for ourselves. We feel it's real important. That's about a day a month. We tell people you can be absent about a day a month and you'll make 95% attendance at school. So we try to really hammer that point. Math Lab is a new offering that we have. We were looking for ways to give kids more math time in our middle school, and because of the rigidity of the schedule, you can't expand the math class any. So what we did was we have our math teacher, Dylan Usselman, at the end of the day during the 7th period elective, has 20 kids right now, and we borrowed the term from the high school. We call it Math Lab. And we're not super creative naming things, but we're good at setting up things. And so we've got 20 kids that are either struggling in math, not at grade level, or not passing their O's. And so they have this class every single day with their math teacher, as well as Libby Fasha, our Title I teacher, and Kathy Batchelder, her assistant. They flood in there, so we have 3 adults supporting these kids in math class every single day. So they're getting double dosed every single day, and it's already starting to pay dividends. So it's a great new program for our school. In your packet, you have a colorful sheet of paper. I just wanted to follow up. Last year at this time, I shared with you all some information that Libby Fasha, our Title I teacher, put together concerning kids who attended our summer experience, which we call our summer school, back in 2011, and the changes that came about in their reading fluency, words correct per minute, between the spring of 2011 and the fall of 2011. And you see the red numbers in that column were kids who made positive changes. They made gains in their reading fluency. Some kids went backwards, and that's going to happen. We weren't able to offer summer school in this past summer of 2012. There was no money in our title budget. There was no money in our school budget to be able to operate a summer school. And you can see what the results were with some of the same kids, just straight across the board. If they go to a blue number, that means they've lost. They've lost in their reading fluency. And you can see there's a lot more blue numbers on that very far right-hand column than there are red numbers. Down below, she just summarizes it very quickly. Summer school of 2011, total number of kids, and these are kids that are still with us at Butte Creek, 17 kids. 65% made gains in their reading, 35% lost a little bit. ELD kids, English language development, in the right-hand column in the blue, or excuse me, in the green boxes, 67% of those kids gained, 33% lost. Now you drop down below to no summer school this year, and the numbers flip right around. 42% of all kids gained, 58% of all the kids lost, and it was even more significant with our ELD kids. 20% of the kids made gains from last spring to this summer, 80% lost. So just as a follow-up, we're going to try to be able to operate a summer school this next summer if we can. We do it in August, so we take a break in July and come back in August and leads it right into the school year. But I thought that was interesting data that she keeps on tracking those kids. Like I mentioned, Russian class is going strong. On the back side of the report in yellow, you have some details. New this year for Russian class is a high school and adult learner class. And we have 6 people that are enrolled in that. It's Tuesday nights at the high school. And so that's branching out to kind of reach the high school kids that have taken it at Butte Creek, and then we'll advance them in the high school, and some adults from the community to go in as well. So she's at 6 now, looking to grow that class even larger. So we're excited about that. Attached in your packets are some writing samples for a few of the kids at Butte Creek. They've written a story in Russian on the top, and then either below it or on the back side, they've translated in English for you. I couldn't read the Russian. So they've got the translation for you there. Down below in school climate, we talked about the Positive Family Support Grant that Butte Creek is in. Now we're in year 2 of that grant. And I included for you in your packet a school readiness checking form. This is part of the grant process. Even though the grant focuses mostly on middle school kids and their development, and how successful they are in school, we send the school readiness form home to all students. And our Family Resource Center is open to parents of all students anytime they need to. So this was sent out the start of the school year, and we received 114 of them back, which we thought was a really great response back. And this is for parents to kind of rate how their kids are on a variety of indicators for their readiness to be successful in school. And 39 of those checked in the box down below. They would like a follow-up from the school counselor to maybe bring them in and ask them further questions or give them further help to help their children be successful. So we thought that was a great feedback, number of feedback. Our Starfish Mentor program serves 9 students. Those are mentors that come in from the outside, and we have 28 Butte Creek students that are mentored by staff members at Butte Creek, led by David Scott. We call that Mentor for Success. Wells Fargo gave us another $1,000 check this year for us in Eugene Field, along with the giant stuffed horse that we'll raffle off at our auction in February. We are helping 25 Butte Creek families with Christmas boxes. Families that ask us to be adopted, if we can help them, and then we match them with Butte Creek families who choose to adopt them. So 25 families will receive food and gifts this Christmas through this program, which has been ongoing for a long time at Butte Creek. And finally, we have a couple of programs coming up. I've mentioned Friendly Persuasion before, which is a girls group. We have that coming up in January, and we're beginning another one in March through parent Leslie Brighton at Butte Creek, and also a couple other schools in Silver called Girls on the Run. It should be a 10-week program, again, hitting self-esteem and good choices for the young ladies at Butte Creek, which used to do it. It culminates, they do it through running. They get out, their fee includes a pair of shoes, they go out and run, and then they end up doing I think it's a 3K or 5K in the springtime as they finish their program. So, those are some of the great things that are happening in Butte Creek this fall so far.
Very good. Questions for Kevin? No. Thank you, Kevin. Very good report.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mark Hannon, high school.
Good evening. I do not know Russian, so what you have in front of you is a packet I'll refer to. And the first page is a letter that I wrote to our parents. It's currently posted on the school website, which refers to the report card and the disappointing news that our report card rating was in need of improvement. I know Mr. Blando filled you in a little bit on that issue last month. The issue being a small number of alternative ed students not being tested, in a miscommunication between the high school and whether or not those students should be tested or not. GED students typically are not tested. However, our GED program is on campus and we collect ADM for them, so they are our students and they need to be tested. So what I can assure you are the two things that are listed in the letter. We've clarified this issue. It will not happen again. Those students will be tested. And the second thing, and most importantly, I want to make sure that the board and the public understand that this in no way reflects upon the student body or the staff and the great work that they do there. It's my responsibility and that's on me. The second thing I wanted to bring to your attention, just a quick update on our RIE program. JFK recently contacted us and is now stealing, if you will, the program, and they'll be incorporating it into their schedule. And they're actually going to, they have students, as you know, that come to our campus in the morning time for some CTE courses, and they're actually going to coordinate those students coming to our campus, because they're going to have RIE at the exact same time. So if we request their students, we're now actually going to have them transported to our campus if they're needed for those courses. The second thing, and we consistently look for ways to improve the program, and specifically trying to look at ways to expand on how it's used. And one of the things that we recently met with, and you can look on page 2, is we've branched out and reached out to our local fire and emergency personnel, and we're looking at beginning a program next year that will be looking for students in grades 10 and 11 that are interested in fire and life science, fire and life safety science. And you can see who the partners are there, and we've currently met with them, and hopefully we'll be able to add that to some of the RIE days for next year. Briefly, to address personal finance, Mr. Blando asked me to look at possibly looking at a way to offer credit by proficiency, so we'll be looking into that over the course of this next semester as we pilot the program, assuming that it's approved next month. We're looking at how that's going to impact next year's seniors. And Julie, I appreciate the support for the graded portion of it, because really that's the intent. The only reason that I even suggested that at the work session was as a way to transition that first class to make it a little bit less intrusive on their grad plan, considering they didn't know that they had that course as a graduation requirement when they entered high school. One thing I do want to clarify regarding the FTE, and I haven't had a chance to talk with Tiffany yet about this, but in the newspaper, it was a little bit confusing on that, yes, this is a new course that's being created, but we will be using current FTE to staff the course. We will not be adding any FTE if this course is approved. Moving on to college course opportunities, page 3. Those are all of the courses that are currently offered at Silverton High School that students can earn college credit. The majority of those courses are articulated through local community colleges, some of them through AP credit, but earning credit in those courses leads students to an Associate of Arts for an Oregon transfer student. And with some creative planning and work with the counselors, students can leave Silverton High School close to an Associate of Arts by taking these courses. We've really added a lot of these courses in the last few years and are really proud of that accomplishment.
That's a lot. I think we need to recognize that's a lot of extra work for our teachers too, and so we really appreciate that.
It really is.
It's good for kids and families.
And to articulate with the colleges, we really appreciate that work that they do also, and it's just a win-win for them and for our students. The last page is the AP 5-year summary, and you'll note 2012, which I get these summaries in the summertime. Students take these. The 2012 was last year's seniors and juniors, and if you'll note, the dark color is Silverton High School, and you can see the number of students that have taken the tests over the course of the last 5 years. Total AP students in the first box to the upper right, 54 students in 2008, 112 total AP students in 2012. You'll also note right under that the number of exams, 60 in 2008, 159 in 2012, and the number of AP students with a score of 3 or plus, 37 in 2008, 81 in 2012. So that's been a real focus at the high school to add AP courses along with the community college courses. AP courses are universally accepted. The community college courses are accepted where they're accepted. So, for example, Willamette University doesn't accept a lot of those courses, but AP courses they do. So it provides those students that are looking at private education beyond Silverton High School an opportunity to earn credit. A couple other things. We recently had our special ed crew hold their annual Santa Mouse Bazaar, and it's really grown into something pretty amazing. They had over 100 vendors, and they rent table space, and with those vending spaces and renting the tables and sales and silent auction, our special ed program was able to raise over $3,000. So they were really proud of that, and it's just another creative way that our programs earn money over the course of the year to help sustain the things that they do. And finally, I wanted to give you an update because it may end up, you may end up hearing about it. I currently sit on the Oregon School Athletic Association Delegate Assembly, and one of the subcommittees is the classification committee, and I sit on that committee, and that committee is looking at classifications for all of the OSAA programs. And one of the proposals is moving from a 6 classification system, which we currently have, to a 5 classification system. That concerned me, hence the reason, part of the reason I'm sitting on the committee. But also in looking at it from a state perspective, I think it's important that we look at constantly trying to improve what we're doing. There's going to be some proposals that will come out. One's 6 classification with the ADM numbers adjusted, which will affect some schools. There's a 5 classification proposal that will definitely affect some schools. And then there's kind of a hybrid 5 classification, but 5 classification for football only. That was my exact response. But we'll take a look at it when it comes out. And this is a year-long process. We don't make a recommendation to the OSAA board until next fall. And then they make a recommendation, or they rule on the recommendation, and then it's not in place until the following year. So we finish this year and have next year as in our current classification. The thing that I also want to mention, there's going to be, most likely there's going to be a socioeconomic status piece that's going to be placed on schools that will help level the playing field with those schools that are where they have a higher number of free reduced lunch athletes. So for example, if you are Silverton High School, for example, our ADM number for the OSAA is 1,146 students. With the SES adjustment, it puts us at 1,035. And then they'll take that 1,035 and fill in the different classification levels. So it helps level the playing field a little bit for those schools that have a higher number of students in population.
I guess I don't understand that. Why would you want to do that?
Well, the rationale is more affluent communities have more opportunity for athletes to get more training and to get better equipment, and basically where the money goes, it helps produce a better athlete. For example, Jesuit, a private school that only has less than 1,000 students. I think it's less than 1,000, and clearly they put out some of the best teams every year. And
But the flip side, you could say Jefferson in Portland had a state championship basketball team, outstanding team a couple years ago, and I'm sure they're very low on the
they are.
poverty.
In fact, those schools actually are looking at. There's some of the schools that are encouraging the possibility of looking at a socioeconomic status factor. Woodburn, for example.
Of course,
has-
it helps them out.
Woodburn has, for example, has over 1,400 students, and that could potentially put them competing against the Jesuits and the Central Catholics. And but with the socioeconomic factor, it could help them in terms of maybe participating at a lower level. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with it. It's the factors that we're working with.
Interesting.
I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's going to be a hot topic, because anytime you start talking about moving leagues or moving classifications, it really can affect the competitive balance of the school, and in our case, when you're one high school town, it's a pretty big deal.
Any idea if we'd be playing bigger schools or smaller schools, or does that depend on the plan?
Yes and no. It depends on the proposal. The 6A proposal, we would remain 5A. The 5A proposal, we would go to 4A as it stands. And then the football-only proposal has us 5A, but in a lower classification 5A. So it's a little bit confusing, but
Yeah, I guess.
we're trying to, when I say I'm trying to make sure that we look at it from the health of the entire state, but also in terms of what that looks like for Silverton High School.
Okay.
What's the problem that prompted this? Or is this just something that they do every 5-6 years? Or time period? I mean-
Tom, how long do you have?
Okay.
No, I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version.
Yeah.
The issue is coming from what I understand, the 6A schools, and there's some travel involved that is not ideal. So there's economics that are involved. There's some competitive balance issues. If you poll most of the state, most of the state is pretty happy with the way that it is. Hence the reason I'm sitting on that committee.
So it's probably the same schools that were fighting it last time when we went to 6A.
That's a pretty good move.
So probably Salem and Eugene.
That's safe to
Safely.
Yeah.
think
Same folks.
Okay, other questions from Mark?
Actually, I had a couple on your presentation. One, getting back to the finance class and even stalling for a year. I think the kids immediately could benefit from it, and they'll take it more seriously. I know my child would. If you skip that part of it, she could care less. That I think it's really important that a lot of the high schoolers do have that, and it's so important for them to be able to function once they get out of high school, and even the really brilliant kids don't have a clue. So I think it's important immediately. The other question I had was, I was wondering with the RIEs, what's the percentage of kids now that it's been going for a while that actually are using those to catch up?
The last number that I saw, we had about half the student body was requested. So out of 1,200 students, we had about 600 students. What we recently instituted, we had one of our staff members write a computer program that automatically places students that have failing grades that haven't been requested. They automatically get requested. We had some students that were falling through the cracks that for whatever reason would not be requested or were requested multiple times. So this program, if a student has, out of the 2 periods during RIE, has an open period and they have a failing grade, it automatically assigns them. And we're just into our second month of that. So we've got some more tweaks to continue. The extension piece is really the part that I think we need to continue to look at. For example, the fire safety program, and that's when we do. That's when we invite colleges to come in and speak to our kids. the extension piece is the piece that continues to need. We've got it pretty well dialed in for the students that are not doing well, the students that are struggling. It's the students that aren't being requested that we could utilize that time better. So that's what we're really working on.
And when one student's requested by two teachers, how does that work? Because there was some conflict in how that was being handled as
That's
well.
a really good question, and how we initially work that out, we take the 4 core classes, English, Math, Science, and Social Science, and they have bumping rights, if you will. So if you're requested by 2 of those 4, then you would go to those classes. If you're requested by an elective course, and you are requested by core courses, the core courses take precedence. If you're not requested by the core courses, then you get requested by the elective course. One of the things that has happened out of that is our elective courses are every bit as important as our core courses to us. And so we've actually started using AG time for those elective teachers to request kids because they were getting bumped by the English and Math and Science and Social Science teachers. I appreciate, Julie, I really do, the fact that it's important for the personal finance class and that it needs to be graded. I completely agree, and I appreciate the folks that spoke tonight. I've had some communication from local community business partners and volunteering to come in and speak in the class. It's been a very positive response, and I think the outcome could be what I was hoping it would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree, Mark. The personal finance is going to benefit so many kids, so many things that they need to know and they don't have a clue. And I just wanted to comment on RIE too. I know a lot of kids who are really benefiting from that, and I know it's a work in progress and there's things to figure out yet, but the kids who are need help, need extra help, I think a lot of kids who are really benefiting from it, and I think it's going to be a good program. And the further we get into higher standards and everything, it's going to become even more important, I think. So,
Appreciate that.
So. Questions for Mark? Anything else? Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Moving on, board reports. Anybody have anything tonight? Very quickly, I was able to get to a couple schools recently. I was able to go up to Victor Point one day, and the administrators are, every so often, some of the principals go and do walkthroughs of other schools, and so I went and joined Linda and a couple other people, Eric and a couple others, who walked through Victor Point one day. And I think that, first off, that's a really cool thing that they're doing, I think, to get out and see what's happening in other schools and how other teachers are operating and some things like that. And it was really helpful for me to go through with them because they would point things out that I would never notice on my own. So educational things and teaching practices and things like that. So that was really helpful. And it's really, I'm starting to see some changes that are related to some Common Core standards and things. Most of the teachers had content objectives posted on their walls of, reading and writing and math. And so the kids know exactly what they're going to learn that week, or in some cases maybe, even in a few days. So that was really cool to see that things are really starting to get spelled out for the kids to really know what they're going to be learning and working on, focusing on that week. The kindergarten room, they were working in some groups, and they had been on a field trip to Silverton Hospital. And the teacher was working with the group, and they were, telling her things they had learned and impressions they had. And she was having them do all this. She was doing the writing on a whiteboard, but she was having them do all the spelling, all the grammar, and that was really cool to see. They were doing a really good job. So really making the kids think more and figure things out on their own a little bit more. First grade room, there was lots of reading going on. They were splitting into 5 different groups, or 5 different choices they could pick, and then they would rotate through those, reading and comprehension and spelling and hitting all those areas. Mrs. Ziesmer's class, they had read read novels in groups, and the kids were all working on these trifold things, and they had 2 of them done, there were going to be 4, but it's kind of different highlights of the story, and then, they used some artwork in these trifold things they had made, but they did some writing exercises on them at the same time, which was the main focus of the thing, so very cool to see. And in the upper grades, they were working on math in the 7th and 8th and 6th graders too. And saw a shift there too, because the kids were the teacher was having them really work on defending their answers. And they may have answered a question correctly, but it may not be the best way to explain that math problem, or it may not have been the best answer. I was confused too, but it was really neat because the kids were she was having them really work on defending their answers and why they felt that way and why they made that answer, which is exactly what they're going to have to be doing when they get to the Common Core test. So really good things happening up there. And I was able also to go to Eugene Field. And there's some really neat things happening there. They're working really hard down there. They've had, some issues this year with kids not really knowing how to do school. And they have a really big 1st grade class, so there's been some issues around that. But they opened up the basement for a special place for some of the kids who have certain behaviors. They just don't know quite how to act or how to address certain things, or how to, that it's not okay just to slap somebody upside the head. And so it was a really neat space they had down there, some bigger tables, and a kid could have a bigger table for their own space, and then some other areas where they could, computer stations, and just some little decompression areas. And I forget how many kids Jennifer said they had down there, but it was obviously it was really being successful for some of these kids who needed a little bit of extra help on behavior issues and things like that. And it's kind of a way to hit some of those issues before these kids end up in an SLP program or something like that. So that was neat to see. They also had the counselor had her own room this year at Eugene Field, and they were, instead of her going around to the classrooms, they would have the kids come to her, which they said was very beneficial too, because they even had an arrow on the floor in the room, so the kids know that this is how you walk into the classroom. So just some some issues that they're having to deal with down there, but they're doing a really good job working on that stuff. Lots of things happen in the classrooms. It always amazes me the creative ways the teachers have of getting kids to learn. And again, the Common Core, or the content objectives, were up on the walls, so kids knew exactly what they were doing. One of the 3rd grade teachers told me that she has a class of 22, and about half of them aren't reading at grade level yet. And so they've been working really hard with those kids and with families to figure out how they're going to get there. And so there's just a lot of really neat things happening. People are working really hard. So really, positive things at Eugene Field too. So that's all I had. Anyway, okay, correspondence. We had the email letter from Mr. Dedrick, I think, about the personal finance class, and then today there were a couple from the Future Foxes football and soccer club. You guys saw those. Anything else?
You received one today about the Slater Street campus as well.
Oh, that's correct, yeah. Sorry, missed that one. Okay. Okay, I'd like to open it up for a second audience with visitors. Would anybody else like to address the board tonight? Okay, seeing none, we have a couple action items. 20 seconds. 30, Gene. 30 seconds.
Thank you. All right, well, this is regarding what Andy said, that they put in a good effort working with the applicants for the architectural position. I think that's very true. But sometimes we can spend time with someone that may not be the right applicant and spend a lot of effort putting into it. The ORS allows you to be able to pinpoint different people that would be of a better caliber to suit this project. For instance, it's a stick frame construction assembly with poured in place concrete and brick masonry. I think that to have somebody that would have that experience. You know, it's a 75-year-old building rather than being high-tech oriented, which is the case with Weeks. I think would be better, we're probably in a better job, but I still recommend that we wait until we see which direction it goes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gene. Okay, moving on to our action items. The first one, approve resolution number 12-10, 2012, authorizing refunding of the 2007 general obligation bond issue.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes, thank you. Action item number B, approve Dole Olson Weeks IBI Group Architects of Portland as the district facility upgrade architectural firm. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion
For approval?
for approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. We will adjourn regular session and we'll come back into executive session under ORS 192860 in a few minutes. So thank you for coming tonight.